The invasion directive. The Galactic Empire's fleet command orbited Earth like a halo of doom. From the bridge of the dreadnought Invictus Var, Admiral Chris peered down at the blue and green world spinning beneath them. Primitive, he muttered, tentacles curling slightly around the brass rail. Such a beautiful planet. Shame we'll have to break it to make it ours. Around him, hollow displays shimmered with data streams. Maps of human military bases, heat signatures from cities, and old satellite broadcasts filtered through translation programs. The Empire had studied Earth for months before initiating Operation Subdue Terra, a planetary occupation campaign expected to last no more than a week. Ground resistance minimal. Orbital defenses non-existent. We will encounter no difficulty, declared strategist Voro, a tall, insectoid officer whose head shimmered with intelligence implants. Chrysax sneered. They still use combustion engines for their war machines. Tracks instead of hovercraft. A novelty at best. But in a forgotten corner of the command deck, a single officer raised her voice. "Admiral," said Sabinalus Trezavel, a data intelligence officer barely old enough for command. "Human ground warfare evolved independently from our models. They've refined the art of terrain combat. Their tanks are unorthodox." Voro hissed a laugh. "Tanks? Ground-crawling relics. Please, analyst, leave war planning to warriors." The Admiral dismissed her with a wave. The order was given, deploy the drop forces. On Earth, fire rained from the skies. Hundreds of spherical troop carriers streaked through the atmosphere like meteors, landing across major continents with thundering precision. Their undersides opened to release glistening mechs, power-armored infantry, and Empire hovercraft, machines optimized for subjugation. In the Ardennes forest of Europe, the first alien walkers emerged into snow-dusted trees. They didn't expect resistance, only to secure a forward base. Instead, their advance was met with sudden, thunderous explosions. Not orbital fire, not missiles. It was something older, more direct. The lead Empire walker took a shell to the side. Armor flared, sensors fried. It toppled with a metallic shriek, half its chassis caving in from the kinetic force. Another shell slammed into the hovercraft behind it, flipping it sideways into a grove of frozen trees. "Ambush!" cried the Empire unit leader over internal comms. "Where is it coming from?" Cloaked by terrain and decades of camouflage training, Major Elena Vasquez peered through the scope of her Abrams tank. "Target 3 o'clock. Next mechs exposed. Fire when ready, Gunny." Her tank's cannon barked again. The shell tore through a second walker's cockpit, vaporizing the alien inside. From orbit, the battle made no sense. Empire analysts watched confused telemetry. Elite assault units being decimated by slow-moving vehicles hidden in terrain the Empire barely mapped. "We're losing walker units. Over 34% down in Sector C-17, an officer stammered. They're using those tracked machines." "Tanks," hissed Voro, no longer laughing. Chrysax leaned forward. "What kind of tanks?" The analyst on screen looked pale. "Earth model. M1 Abrams. Old design, but heavily modified. Thermal dampeners. Reactive armor. Advanced targeting from satellites and drones. They've improved them. They're tearing through our walkers," Trezavel added quietly, finally being noticed. "Their tanks use terrain, cover, and networked fire control. Our troops aren't prepared for this kind of warfare." On Earth, battle reports flooded in. A unit in Colorado was overrun when 5 tanks flanked them from behind a mountain pass. In Ukraine, a tank platoon destroyed a dropship on the ground before it could deploy. In the jungles of Southeast Asia, tanks rolled through mud and brush, immune to hovercraft sensors. It wasn't just resistance, it was organized, tactical, deadly. Back in the Ardennes, Vasquez's voice crackled over the squad comm. "Echo team, shift west. More drop pods incoming. Line up behind that ridge. We'll hit them from above." "Roger that," Gunny Morales responded. His Abrams growled to life, its engine echoing through the pines like a sleeping giant waking. The Empire had sent sleek warships and floating war machines. Humanity answered with steel titans on treads. They weren't elegant, but they were effective. And when the aliens came with pride and fire from the sky, the tanks answered with thunder from the ground. In orbit, Admiral Chris Hax stood silent as reports scrolled across the holodeck. His fleet had not yet fired a shot, but already thousands of his elite troops lay dead or dismembered in the forests and deserts of Earth. How he muttered. Trezavel finally spoke. You thought war was only about technology, she said quietly. They thought about terrain, strategy, and adaptability. You laughed at their tanks, but those tanks were built for this world. Yours weren't. Chris Hax turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. Give me the ground commander. Tell them, eliminate those machines at all cost. She gave a curt nod, but she already knew. It was too late for that. Steel beasts roar. The snow around the Abrams treads hissed and melted as its engine roared to life. A new storm was coming, but wasn't weather. It was the Empire. Major Elena Vasquez leaned against the turret hatch, scanning the tree line with augmented binoculars. On the ridge across the valley, dozens of blinking lights marked incoming Empire units, hovercraft, bipedal walkers, and a fresh column of drop mechs unloading from a new wave of landers. They're bringing in heavier stuff, Morales said inside the tank, his fingers drumming on the targeting controls. Guess we scared him. They still don't understand, Vasquez murmured. This isn't their battlefield. At Empire Forward Command, chaos brewed behind holograms and tactical overlays. Commander Tvalek, one of the Empire's most decorated field generals, snarled at his operators. Reinforce the southern flanks. Use flame drones and saturation plasma. If they're hiding these tanks in terrain, we burn the terrain down. General, said an aide cautiously, these tanks, they're not hiding. They're hunting. The Empire's next assault began with brute force. Hovercraft led the charge, zipping low over icy ridges, laying down suppressive fire. Behind them, towering mechs advanced, weapons hot, scanners sweeping for targets. Drones buzzed overhead, mapping every crevice of the land. But the tanks had already moved. From deep in the woods, a burst of static broke into the comms net. This is Hammer 4-1. Confirm overwatch. Let the vultures come. Then came the first strike, and Abrams, hidden beneath a thermally insulated net, fired a sabot round into a hovercraft's underbelly. The craft exploded mid-air, raining debris on its own advancing infantry. Then another, and another. Every time the Empire thought they saw the enemy, the humans were already repositioning. These weren't static, outdated relics. These were apex predators. Target down, Morales said flatly. 3 more hovercraft incoming, bearing 230. Line them up, Vasquez ordered. Use the ravine. Pin them between rock and steel. The Abrams tank split and maneuvered down into a narrow defile. The hovercraft pursued, too confident, too fast. Too late. One by one, tanks emerged from ambush points along the ravine walls. Their cannons fired in sequence, each shot landing with terrifying accuracy. Plasma shields flared, then failed. The last hovercraft tried to climb upward, only to be speared through its side and thrown into the trees. Back at the Imperial Orbital Command, Admiral Krizhax's mandibles clicked in irritation. Why do they keep winning? Their machines are outdated. Trezavel leaned forward, tapping on the projection. Because they think in 3 dimensions. Our mechs are built for domination, not adaptation. Human tanks? They're modular, low profile, camouflaged, and fast. Every Abrams is networked with battlefield AI. They're coordinated like a swarm, but they don't follow predictable algorithms. She changed the display to thermal scans. Dozens of heatless tank outlines, cold as rock, vanished into mountains, forests, and city rubble. They make ghosts out of steel. The Empire attempted orbital drone strikes next. High above, sensor clusters tracked vague coordinates and loosed guided plasma lances into valleys and hillsides. Entire forests burned, but the tanks were never where they were supposed to be. They had already moved. In the French Alps, a tank column used mountain trails to climb above the drone field and fire downhill, destroying a reinforced Empire outpost. In the Nevada desert, a trio of Abrams dragged camo nets over a pipeline, waited for hours, and blasted a mecha convoy to molten slag in 20 seconds flat. Every engagement was a masterclass in patient, brutal efficiency. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden fire through the Ardennes trees, Vasquez's unit repositioned along a ridgeline. Behind them, the burnt husks of mechs littered the battlefield. The Empire had lost 33 armored units and 4 support walkers in a single day. Empire doctrine called it impossible, but it had just happened. "I almost feel bad," Morales muttered as he reset the targeting calibrations. Vasquez smiled thinly. "Don't. They came here expecting to win by default. They thought our world would fold like a simulation." She looked out at the battlefield, where columns of black smoke rose like grim victory flags. They forgot that tanks were never just machines. Their resolve, their fury on treads. And this is our turf. In orbit, the Empire's strategic AI delivered a chilling report. Analysis: human ground vehicles statistically outperform Empire drop mechs in terrain under 2,000 meters elevation and in any environment with line-of-sight obstruction. Suggested reclassification: human tanks, class Omega ground asset. Priority threat level: high. Suggested course of action: avoid close ground engagements. Shift to air superiority focus. Admiral Chris read the report twice, slowly, then crushed his datapad against the bulkhead. Across Earth, the message spread through Allied command networks. The tanks are holding. In bunkers and command tents, commanders around the globe began to believe. They redirected energy away from orbital strikes and toward logistical supply lines, fuel, ammo, engineers. A global tank strategy was forming. Tanks were no longer support units. They were the main assault force. Steel beasts had become the tip of humanity's spear. The Empire shattered at ground zero. The city of Warsaw burned at the edges. Empire command ships had glassed the outskirts, hoping to create a landing zone free from resistance. Instead, they had driven human defenders deeper into the urban labyrinth, a mistake they were only beginning to understand. From the smoking rooftops, human spotters relayed coordinates. In narrow alleys, tank barrels peeked through improvised camo netting. Beneath the crumbled subway system, diesel fumes mixed with the scent of war. Major Elena Vasquez stared at the display inside her Abrams tank, one hand gripping the side of the hatch. It's time. All across the ruins of Warsaw, human tanks came to life. The Empire had chosen Warsaw as a symbol. Centrally located, historically scarred, but rebuilt with defiance. It was the perfect location for their Eastern command hub. From their floating command spire above the city center, General Tvalek looked down with pride. The city is fractured. Their resistance is broken. Today we decapitate Earth's defense, he declared. Scans indicate human vehicles moving beneath the rubble, one of his aides noted. Tank class, but slow. They cannot breach our defenses. Tvalek chuckled. Let them crawl. By the time they arrive, we'll have crushed the last of their organized units. Below them, the tanks were not crawling. They were surrounding. Inside the subway tunnels, Vasquez's tank rumbled in darkness. Tunnel integrity? She asked. Unstable, Morales answered. But we reinforced this section with steel plates and rubble nets. We'll pop up right beneath their shield pylons. Perfect. With a hydraulic shutter, the tunnel widened into a collapsed parking garage. Cracks of daylight broke through rubble overhead. Above them, the Empire's shield generator loomed, pulsing blue with power. Load Sabo, Vasquez ordered. Aim for the conduit brace. Fire. The shot punched through 2 floors of concrete, then smashed into the shield pylon like a thunderbolt. Sparks erupted. The energy field above the command spire flickered. It confirmed. Morales grinned. Now signal the others. It's go time. Across the war-torn districts, tanks surged from unexpected positions. In Old Town, a unit of retrofitted Leopard 2s crashed through buildings to flank Empire artillery mechs. Near the river, Two Abrams tanks emerged from beneath a collapsed bridge and blew apart a landing skiff before it could unload reinforcements. On the edge of the business district, T-14 armadas used reflective panels and smoke canisters to trick Empire sensors and slam through hovercraft ranks. In less than 20 minutes, coordinated human tank teams had breached 4 outer Empire defensive rings. It was the first true siege, and humans were the besiegers. Tvalek watched with growing dread as blue symbols, Empire assets, disappeared from his tactical map. Where are they coming from? They're using the city itself as a weapon. They're not tanks. They're wolves, whispered one of his lieutenants. Just then, a massive explosion shook the command spire. A drone camera outside showed the unbelievable. A tank had breached the upper levels of the skyscraper via an elevator shaft reinforced by human engineers. It had fired point-blank into the communications array. The entire spire shuddered and listed sideways. How did they? Tvalek started but stopped. Outside the command windows, for tanks had somehow scaled the remains of a parking tower and were firing upwards, shell by shell, into the belly of the floating structure. His floating fortress began to fall. Vasquez stood atop her tank as the command tower crashed into the center of Warsaw, a giant collapsing steel monument. Fires erupted where once alien banners had waved. All units pushed forward. No survivors. From the surrounding streets, the remaining Empire forces broke ranks. Without shields, without coordination, they were nothing but targets. Tank after tank advanced like wrath incarnate. In orbit, Admiral Chris saw the live feed just moments after it leaked through secure channels. The footage, now being shared across dozens of star systems, showed a human tank crashing through a reinforced checkpoint, shelling a plasma turret, then ascending an elevator shaft to deliver the final shot. A tank, inside a building, destroying a floating fortress. A single line of human dialogue echoed across the feed. You forgot this is our world. You fight from above, we fight from the ground up. Rebellion sparked across 3 vassal species by morning. On Earth, the final cleanup of Warsaw's battle zones stretched into the night. Vasquez climbed down from her tank, boots crunching against alien armor plates and broken concrete. Her crew gathered around the cracked hull of the tank, smoke still rising from the barrel. Think they'll try this again? Morales asked. No, she said quietly. They'll think twice before underestimating steel. She looked to the eastern horizon, where more landers still floated, hesitating, uncertain, leaderless. And when they do come again, we'll remind them. Tanks don't need wings to kill giants. Steel victory. The Amazon basin was thick with moisture and tension. Rain fell in sheets, masking the movements of the remaining Empire forces. Their massive exoplatforms trudged through the mud, retreating from once secure outposts now reduced to twisted metal and charred soil. The Empire's planetary forces were broken, scattered, leaderless, and outmaneuvered. Admiral Chris had not slept in 2 days. His once proud fleet hung in orbit like dying vultures, unsure whether to strike again or flee in disgrace. His command spire flickered with stress signals, reports of rebellion among client species, and one haunting phrase repeated by both humans and alien defectors alike. Steel wins. Far below, in the soaked jungle, Major Elena Vasquez stared at her display. The tank systems buzzed as rain pounded the hull. Signals solid. Targets confirmed, Morales muttered, wiping condensation from his visor. Empire bunker. Last ground base on the continent. 6 walkers, unknown aerial support, 1 shield node still active. Not for long, Vasquez replied. Bring up the charge tank. We break the shield, we break the last of them. Her Abrams growled forward, part of a column of 15 tanks. American, German, Russian, Korean, all old rivals now fused under one Earth flag. Their treads churned through rainforest paths carved by fire and artillery. Above the trees, orbiting drop fortresses watched silently, unwilling to descend. The Empire had learned. The hard way. Inside the shielded bunker, Commander Tvalek, now stripped of rank and command, begged into the comms. Admiral Krishaks, they're coming. These tanks, they're not machines. They're manifestations of vengeance. Every shot is precise. Every maneuver designed. We need orbital support. No, Krishaks responded coldly. You had your chance. You mocked them. Now, endure what you built. The line went dead. Outside, the first shot from Vasquez's rail-enhanced cannon struck the shield emitter. The blast bent the shield's frequency, warping it like heat on metal. Seconds later, a second tank fired, then a third. With a sharp crack of rupturing plasma, the shield collapsed. Vasquez keyed into her unit's frequency. All tanks, hammer formation. Drive through them. From the jungle's edge, the tanks burst forward. Empire walkers fired wildly, plasma bolts lighting up the rain. The first Abrams took a glancing hit, but its reactive armor peeled off the damage and kept going. The tanks didn't stop, they accelerated. One Leopard swung around and took out a walker's leg with a precision shot. Another tank smashed through an alien barricade like it was paper. As Vasquez's tank crested the final hill, the Empire's last command structure came into view, a low dome, blinking red, already half sunken into mud. She didn't hesitate. Main gun. Fire. The dome vanished in a plume of fire and shrapnel. Up above, Krishaks watched the bunker vanish in silence. No cheers from his crew. No defiance. Only quiet resignation. Order a full retreat, he said finally. "And Earth?" an officer asked. The admiral stared down at the blue planet. They've won. Not just the ground, but the war of perception. Their tanks fight better than our ship's command. He turned and left the bridge. 3 days later, the last Empire ship departed Earth's orbit, leaving behind debris, prisoners, and a war they never truly understood. In the aftermath, Earth's nations stood united for the first time in generations. On the scorched plains of Poland, the newly formed United Terran Council held its first assembly. The banner of humanity now bore a stylized image of a tank treading over broken alien steel. Major Elena Vasquez stood at the podium, her battle-worn tank behind her like a sleeping beast. "We were not supposed to win," she said. "They had fleets. They had the stars. We had machines built in the last century, driven by courage and dirt under our nails." She paused, letting the crowd absorb her words. They thought war was fought from space, but they forgot where war ends. On the ground, in trenches, in cities, in jungles. And when it comes to the ground, humanity is unmatched. The cheers could be heard across nations. A week later, on a distant colony world in the Varnak sector, rebels broadcast a pirated video. It showed a single tank, a captured Abrams, firing into an Empire checkpoint, followed by a surge of civilian fighters. The caption read, "Steel isn't bound to Earth anymore." In a secure bunker back on Earth, Vasquez sat alone, reviewing battle footage. Morales knocked and entered. "We're getting requests. Other worlds want training. Schematics. Blueprints for the Abrams variants." Vasquez looked up. "They want tanks." He nodded. "They want what made the Empire bleed." She leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Then we give it to them. Not just tanks. Not just weapons. We give them the doctrine. We give them steel courage." And so began the next chapter of warfare. Not from orbit. Not from fleets. But from the ground. Where treads met dirt. Where cannon thunder echoed through valleys. Where empires fell beneath machines humanity once called old. Tanks. Humanity's iron monsters. And now, the galaxy's greatest fear.